Salvete, and welcome to Chapter 10 from Wheelock's Latin Grammar. In Chapter 10, we're going to look at fourth conjugation verbs and IO verbs of the third conjugation. So with fourth conjugation, we're going to see these verbs have a long stem vowel again, just like first and second conjugation. The long I appears in all of the present system, which is the present, future, and imperfect tenses. And just like we did with the first and second conjugation, we formed the verbal stem by just dropping the RE. And we'll take a look at it here in a second, but our model verb is going to be audio, audire, audivi, auditum, to hear. So that's fourth conjugation verbs. There's another closely related class of verbs called IO verbs of the third conjugation. So some third conjugation verbs have an I throughout the present system. These third conjugation verbs are very similar to fourth conjugation, and they actually look more like fourth than they do third, so they end up being kind of halfway in between. So in the present system, they're going to look identical in all of their forms, with the exception of vocative, to fourth conjugation. So our model verb for third IO verbs is copio, copere, kepi, coptum, which means to take. So we'll start off by looking at our fourth conjugation verbs in the present tense. Like we said, fourth conjugation has a long I stem vowel, and this I is going to appear in the present, future, and imperfect tenses. And again, to form the verbal stem, we drop the RE. So our model verb audio, audire, audivi, auditum, to hear. So we'll go to the infinitive audire and drop the RE. So let's look at it in the present tense. First person singular, audio, I hear. Second singular, audis, you hear. Third singular, audit, he hear, it hears. First person plural, audimus, we hear. Second plural, auditus, you plural hear. And then third person plural, audiunt, they hear. So notice that I appears in all six forms. First person, second person, third person, both singular and plural. Now let's take a look at the future tense for fourth conjugation. To form the future, we add an E to the verbal stem, except in first person singular. And then we just add the personal endings. So again, we retain the I that we found by dropping the RE. And then we add an E to indicate that it's future, in every case except for first singular. So here's what we get. First person singular in the future, audiam, I shall hear. Second singular, audies, you will hear. Third singular, audiet, he, she, or it will hear. First person plural, audiemus, we shall hear. Second plural, audietus, you plural will hear. And then third person plural, audient, they will hear. And again, notice the I appears in all six forms. Now on to the imperfect for fourth conjugation. So for the imperfect, we add a long E back to the stem, then add BA, then add the personal endings. So let's go ahead and take a look at our verb paradigm. First person singular, audie bom, I was hearing. Second singular, audie bos, you were hearing. Third singular, audie bot, he, she, or it was hearing. First person plural, audie bomus, we were hearing. Second plural, audie botus, you plural were hearing. And then third person plural, audie bont, they were hearing. And again, notice the I does stay in the stem. And again, that's the indicator for fourth conjugation. Now, onto the imperative forms. For the imperative, we drop the RE from the infinitive for the singular, and then add a TE to make it plural. So in this case, it's just like the first and second conjugations. So our singular imperative would be audi, here. Our plural imperative would be audite, all of you, here. So imperative is very simple to form. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our third IO conjugation verbs in the present tense. So third IO, again, has that short E stem vowel, and an I is going to appear in the present, future, and imperfect very consistently, just like we saw with the fourth conjugation. To form it, though, we go about it a little different way. We're going to drop the entire ERE from the stem. So our modal verb copio, copere, kepi, coptum, to take. So we drop the entire ere, and then we add an I back before we add the personal endings. So we end up with first singular, copio, I take. Second singular, copis, you take. Third singular, capit, he, she, or it takes. First person plural, copimus, we take. Second plural, capitis, you plural take. And then third person plural, copiunt, they take. So again, notice the I appears in all forms, both singular and plural. For the future tense for third IO verbs, since we dropped the entire ERE, we're going to need to add the I back and then add an E to indicate future. So we'll add that to the verbal stem everywhere except for first singular where we add an A instead of an E. Then we add just the personal endings. So we end up with first person singular, copiam, I shall take. Second singular, copies, you will take. Third singular, copiet, he, she, or it will take. Then we go to our plurals. First plural, copiemus, we shall take. Second plural, copietis, you plural will take. And third person plural, copient, they will take. So again, the I appears in all forms, both singular and plural. So we're almost finished. We're going to the imperfect tense for third IO verbs. For the imperfect, since we dropped the whole ERE, we need to add an I and an E back to the stem. Then we add the BA, infix, and then we add the personal endings. So we end up with first person singular in the imperfect, copie bomb, I was taking. Second singular, copie bos, you were taking. Third person singular, copie bot, he, she, or it was taking. Then we go to the plural, first plural, copie bombos, we were taking. Second plural, copie botus, you plural were taking. And then third person plural, copie bont, they were taking. Again, notice the I appears in all forms. So on to the imperatives for third IO. This is the only place where they're not identical to fourth conjugation. For the imperative, we drop the entire ERE. So we'll have to add an E back to the stem to form the singular imperative. So we end up with cape, here. To form the plural, we add an ITE to the stem. So remember, we dropped the ERE. So we add an ITE. So we end up with capite, all of you here. So for the imperatives, it looks more like a third conjugation verbs. Everywhere else, it looks a lot more like a fourth conjugation. So kind of a good rule of thumb is if it has an IO in the first person singular, it's going to have that characteristic I throughout all forms, whether it's a third IO or a fourth. And this right here with the imperatives will be the only place we don't see that characteristic I in the singular imperative. So that brings us to the end of Chapter 10 from Wheelock's Latin Grammar, and that brings us to the end of Latin 1. So until I see you again in Latin 2, Volete.